And welcome to this week's episode of the Inclusive Networker podcast. This is your host, Dr. Ramona, and who are we calling into conversation today? Well, it is Heather Burge. Heather is a former burned out boutique owner from Savannah, Georgia. That is near me. She is near and dear to me in the flesh. I'm so excited. She's from Savannah, and she sold her business after realizing network marketing could allow her the freedom to pursue her calling of helping other entrepreneurs and busy mamas build the business of their dreams. In addition to leading a team of 4,000 plus as an artist 9 top 6 in Saint Beauty, she's the host of the Call to Lead podcast, where she helps network marketers grow their business by choosing faith over fear and leveraging simple systems without having to be a slave to social media. So I am so very excited to have Heather as my guest. Heather, welcome.
Oh my goodness, girl. I am so excited to be here and I'm so glad the Lord put me in your life. So this is a pleasure.
Absolutely. Yes. And so, I always start these conversations with the question about what is your lens, because it's so important to be able to tell people kind of where what your background is and where you're coming from. So tell me, what's your lens?
Okay, awesome. Well, I love the part of the story that's going to relate specifically to your podcast because it's kind of coming from a different lens of a similar story to you, from what I understand,
Mm-hmm.
but a little bit more about, my life as it stands right now is I am a wife and mama, like you said, outside Savannah, Georgia. I used to have a boutique in Savannah for over
Mm-hmm.
15 years. It was a women's sportswear boutique and a bridal salon. We did prom, all that good stuff. While I loved what I did, I worked more than full time. I was dropping off my 2 little girls at daycare, coming in hot to pick them up right at 6 o'clock and working my butt off to be honest, not get paid that much to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was paying myself last. It's really struggling, with more of the burnout side of it. And so enter the network marketing industry, a product that I was already using. It's called Saint. It's a compact basically that consolidates a routine into one simple compact. And I was obsessed personally. So when I was presented with the opportunity, I was like, you know what do I have to lose? This is a way that I could potentially share a product that I already love and be able to supplement my income with a side hustle, basically, as a small business owner.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was 6.5 years ago. I have been with my company, ever since then, and I've grown. As you said, I've grown a team, and now I'm super passionate about building up other leaders, not just in my team or my organization, but within, any network marketing company, which is where the podcast, the Call to
Mm-hmm.
Lead podcast comes in. And so my lens, I guess you could say, when it comes to being a growing inclusive networker, how about that? To wanting to become a
Mm-hmm.
better, more inclusive networker,
I
I
love
think
that. Yeah.
it's because that's where I'm coming from today. And I know we've talked about this, is I'm certainly not an expert, in this field, but it is something that I'm very curious about, as I think we all should be. And that's why I got so
Mm-hmm.
excited when I found you. Is I think this is a conversation that scares a lot of people, and I'm all about choosing that faith over fear. And I think it
Love it.
needs to happen. And I think it needs to bring about, I think a part of the bringing of the diversity and the inclusive aspect of it is just having the conversation. And like you
Mm-hmm.
said, and like you beautifully shared on my podcast, that it starts with getting really curious about your own journey. And so you shared your lens on my podcast, and I immediately thought, yep, this is exactly where my story and why I am passionate about this, even if I don't know much about it. And that stems from high school, like many of
Mm-hmm.
our journeys do, right? I went to a very large, very diverse high school outside of Atlanta, East Coweta. And I loved my school. I had friends of, all color. I was a cheerleader. It was, again, we were friends with each other. I didn't see a lot of, I wouldn't say segregation when it came to friendships, but one of the things that I did see was we had a segregated homecoming court. And
Mm-hmm.
I was the president of the student government, SGA, my senior year. And I remember I thought, if there's one thing that I do before I leave, I want to be able to combine this to make it, in my mind, or at least I hope, a more inclusive environment. Because I could not believe that that was in 1999 or 98. I think is probably when it happened. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
how is it possible that we still have elements of segregation in the 90s? So I think that's kind of where it started for me. Is I've always had many friends that are women of color, and I've had employees when I had my boutique. I've had some amazing network marketing leaders, join my team. But to be honest, I think it's an area where I know I could be better. And so I think that's
Mhm.
kind of the lens that I'm coming from.
Yeah, yeah. And I can really relate to that because we had the same type of thing at my high school when I was growing up in the late 90s as well. And, I think eventually that stopped and they moved away from having the two separate queens. I mean, I was one of the queens. I was the black queen in 96 and there was a white queen in 96, right? And so I think that it's really important for us to think about those things and how they did shape us because I have never really even thought about that experience in high school as something that was shaping the way that I saw inclusiveness. So it's really interesting that you bring that up. And so now, as you're thinking through this and you're thinking about that experience and how it shaped how you wanted to build your team in network marketing and how it made you move forward with building relationships and wanting to see people come together. Tell me kind of what you learned from that, or how did it shape how you move forward from there?
Well, and I think I'm going to even have to think deeper about this since I just had the realization.
Mm-hmm.
But I think ultimately it's something that you touched on the podcast interview that we did over on my podcast, and that is that network marketing can and should be an equitable, inclusive, meaning anyone can do this. Now, I remember I had a mentor that said, all could, wait, what is it? Okay. All Oh gosh, some will. Here it is. Some will,
Yeah.
most won't, all could. And I really believe that with my soul, but I don't necessarily see that when it comes to the diversification of women of color or even different languages.
Mm-hmm.
I know we were chatting off camera about I have a friend that has leads a huge Spanish speaking team. She herself, English was her second language, and with her company, it's actually Paparazzi that was just, or I think still is, just in the United States and Canada, I believe. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not like it's in even any Spanish speaking countries. She has built a team of over 20,000 that are primarily Spanish speaking. And so it's not just, I
Mm-hmm.
think, Black women or women of all different shades and colors. It's truly anyone and everyone. And how can we make this more inclusive? And I really do think it stems to that very first feeling of being put on that platform of leadership and student government and having kind of the possibility to be a part of the bigger picture of it. And I think that's exactly
Mm-hmm.
why I'm so passionate about having this conversation with you.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's so interesting that statement that you said that the leader made. And I truly believe that that statement is true. But I think that we as leaders in network marketing should think deeper about those types of statements, right? And so you said some will, some
Most won't,
won't, most won't,
all
and all could. Okay. And so a lot of times when we say those types of things, we're thinking about, the current systems that we had, they didn't do something right. And we talked about this on your podcast too. And I think it's important for us to think about, okay, well, what are those systems or
yes.
those things that were beneath why
Mhm.
that they didn't, right? Why they could have but didn't, right? And we always have these thoughts of, oh, that person was so good and they I just saw them going to the top. But it takes that deep reflection when we really want to break out of this mold. It takes that deep reflection of saying, maybe there's something in my system
Mhm.
that's not that's not facilitating all people getting to the top. And so I love the fact that you have started to look into systems, right? And thinking through what is the system that we're going to use to help people to really get to the top. And one reason I'm excited about this is that when we're talking about being the inclusive networker, I like to talk about both because, yes, we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but I've learned that if I open the space for people, but they don't have the skills and they don't have the knowledge to be able to operate in that business, in that space, then I'm opening up an opportunity but not giving you what you need to succeed in that opportunity. So I think that the D&I conversation is so important, but you also have to equip your people when you open the environment up for them, right? When you open the opportunities. And so let's talk about what you do with these systems and
Yes.
how it helps people to not have to be on social media all day long. And how did you even come up with all of this?
Yes. Well, systems is something that I've been passionate about since my mentor, Bob Heilig. He has another great podcast that I think your listeners will love called the Your Virtual Upline podcast. And I can remember
Mm-hmm.
when I was growing my network marketing business and I was doing pretty well myself, but I wasn't necessarily seeing the duplication from my team. I remember hearing him say, if it works for you, but it doesn't work for someone else or the next person who joins your team, then it doesn't work in network marketing. And I remember thinking,
Mm.
what does he mean by that? And tell me more. And so I bought his courses, joined his awesome. He has lots of different resources to serve the network marketing community. And one of
Mm-hmm.
the things he talked a lot about were systems, and it's kind of tied into your ROAR acronym that I know your leaders
Mm-hmm.
will know about. But it's basically having systems, like you said, for enrolling new customers, systems for onboarding them and onboarding new artists. And he talks a lot about kind of combining those two, which is a big part of my systems, is looking at your network marketing business as a funnel and realizing that
Mm-hmm.
the recruiting conversation can become a little bit complicated when people realize the easiest way to do it is more just to guide them through that next action on the funnel, whatever that looks like. And so
Mm-hmm.
all of my systems are
Mm-hmm.
based within just guiding that next right thing for that person. And it comes naturally when you kind of work through it. And so I have to credit Bob for a lot of what I've learned with that, but implementing those systems specifically when it came to my processes from the enrolling and onboarding were huge. But then when it came to the marketing side of it, that's where I have found myself to become even more passionate about systems,
Mm-hmm.
because I think in the world of social media, especially in a post-COVID environment where we all had to take our businesses online, at least for a little bit, right?
Yep.
What I've seen is now people feel like they have to build a social media following in order to grow their network marketing business. But the problem with that is they're not serving the people that they're already connected with or following well enough to try to grow and scale that. So,
Teach the people. Come on. Wait, say that again. I want the people to hear this. All right. Say that again.
yeah. So basically, people are over here trying to grow their Instagram following when they don't have the systems or the courage or the connection mindset to be able to serve the people that are right in front of them. Even if it's only 100 people watching your stories, that's 100
Come
people that hear
on.
what you have to say. Where they're over here trying to get 1,000 followers or 10,000 followers or now 100,000 followers, and I'm just like, y'all, this is not number one, it's not necessary because I can tell you I built, a pretty dang big business in my network marketing business without having to build a massive following on social media. And I did try that angle or that strategy, as I talk about over there a lot, but it's not something that you have to do. What you do have to do though is have the conversations, the connections that can come from social media, and then guide them through the funnel with your systems. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. And I think it was in my story today. I was saying if there's an issue like that you're having with lead generation or you're having with people understanding your product or service, it's not some other issue. It's a systems issue. And a lot of times people think that systems automatically mean automation, but
Mm-mm.
that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about automation obviously part of it, right? But what we're talking about is, do you have a process to
Yes.
move people from step A to step Z, right? And if you don't have that process in place, you certainly can't scale it or automate it. You have to know what it is that you're doing to move people along in your business, and then the automation comes along with it. And so often we're automating a mess, right? And we're trying to say, what tools do I have to just grow? And it's like, you're not serving the people that you already have. And I just love that statement that you
Oh my gosh.
made.
Yes. And automations are something that I am super passionate about and definitely something that I use and
Same.
leverage for my business now. Having said that, I think that when you kind of overcome the fear of setting up the processes and kind of get everything in place, I think it can be a crutch to people to do the things that actually
Mm-hmm.
drive your business more, which is just to have a conversation, to use your voice that's tailored to that person to help them feel seen, help them feel well served, not just that you're serving the masses. Because it,
Mm-hmm.
again, I think it's an important facet of especially an emerging leader or a growing leader who's building her business to implement things like that. But you have to be careful not to take out the personalization connection piece, because you're never going to build your customer base and the residual orders that can come from that. And you're certainly not going to
Mm-hmm.
build leaders. You might have people enroll with you. And that's what I see a lot of times when people do build a following, they'll have a lot of people join them, or buy from them once. But guess what they're
Mm-hmm.
going to do? They're going to find a local friend that can serve them well, that doesn't have a big following, that is there, that is there for them. And when they feel like they're just a cog in a wheel, it doesn't lead to repeat business. It doesn't lead to the connections required. That
Yeah.
is what's going to take someone who isn't a distributor to the next level in their business.
Mm-hmm. So with these systems, how are you mixing in that personal connection? And I know, I don't know if you've thought about the inclusion aspect of
Mhm.
that. And so if not, that's fine. But when you think about the way that you add in the personal with the automation, what are some things that you're doing to make sure that you keep that personal touch? Are you doing automation up to a certain point and then you do a touch point and then you do some more automation? Tell us a little bit about how you've put that together.
That's a great question. And I know you love an acronym like I do. And I think that the
I do.
acronym that I teach, which is called the LIFER strategy, LIFER, it's something that I teach on. I actually have a course called Automate to Replicate that helps basically any network marketer set up my text and email, mainly customer follow up, which we'll get to that in a second, systems in place. But I think the most important facet of it is a module that I do at the beginning that shows a spreadsheet. So it's got that kind of techie piece to it, but it walks you through how to set up the LIFER strategy. So LIFER,
Mm-hmm.
the L stands for list. And this is a classic network marketing. This is not something newer that I invented, but it starts with making a list. And I think
Okay.
this is where I know for myself, I could get more intentional, though I've got to have the services on the back end and the systems set up to that, but to, think about how can I be more inclusive with that list? Who are, some people that I can ask some great questions to, not necessarily invite them to join my team or even invite them to try the product, but how can I be more intentional about connecting with the people on that list, doing the next
Mm-hmm.
right thing for that relationship, for that person. But it starts with literally making a list. Then the I stands for the invitation and
Okay.
inviting them to something. So just like if your child, your child was having a birthday party, that's exactly the steps that you would do. You would make a list and you would send them an invitation. It could be a text, could be a handwritten fancy one, could be a voice message. Hey, we're having this on Saturday. You want to come? But it's basically like making the process of the invitation, which doesn't take
Mm-hmm.
long. It can be very scary when you think of like, oh, I have this person on my list that I'm scared to talk to, but I'm going to invite them to something. So then the question becomes, what are you inviting them to? And that's where I have this little kind of check box thing on the spreadsheet where, it's inviting them to the next right part of your funnel system. So for
Mm-hmm.
example, and I'll just use, you as, I hope you don't mind, it just came to me.
No, go ahead.
You live near me, right? You are a beautiful woman of color. We have some really
Mm-hmm.
beautiful inclusive shades in our line that I'd love
Mm-hmm.
you to model for me. So I would invite you and say, hey, Ramona, I would love to practice and play makeup with you with some of these darker shades. If I were, to come hang out with you in the coffee shop, in Pooler, would you let me make you over and do a before and after? So I'm not inviting you to buy the makeup. I'm certainly not inviting you to, join my team or anything. What I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
is inviting you to be a model, for me to try it. And so what that does is then it's that next piece, it's that next part of the funnel for just seeing, again, I'm not even asking you to try it, but just seeing if
Mm-hmm.
you like it. Because what I find is when people do try it, they may be like, oh, wow, this is beautiful. I need a simplified
Mm-hmm.
makeup routine. I'd love to have it all in one, custom palette. Tell me more about this.
Mm-hmm.
So then the
Mm-hmm.
next step in the funnel for us is to get color matched. In my system, I talk about having a form, a Google form, or a Jot form. I'm sorry, to do that. Google form could also work, but Jot form is the one I recommend. And then that guides them through that next system. And so then that's when the automations take over. So there's the L is the list, the invitation to whatever that next right thing is. The F stands for the follow up, because the fortune is in
Okay.
follow up always. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's where my system sets it up to where when they fill out that form, and this could work, it doesn't have to be just with makeup, it could work with a fitness company. It's like you're just asking questions, right? Like how can I learn more about your problems and how what I have to offer might solve them. So when they fill
Mm-hmm.
out that form, it automatically adds them into my text marketing and email platforms. I use Project Broadcast and Flowdesk, so it's automated. It sends them a text message immediately that says, yay, I just saw your submission come through. Give me 48 hours to send over my custom recommendations for you. So then that part is obviously not automated, that, the what
Mm-hmm.
I send to them. And then what's really cool is it has it set up with, if they do decide to purchase from there, then they're removed automatically from the follow-up of
Mm-hmm.
inviting them to purchase, and then so on and so on from there. So I won't get too big in the weeds, but it basically, that whole
Mm-hmm.
process is automated to wherever they are in that funnel, whether they're a customer, whether they haven't yet purchased, whether they join your team, any of those things, they're being served with an automated follow-up, if that makes
Okay.
sense. So
Mm-hmm.
then the E is what comes next, and that's engage. And this cannot be automated.
Love
Well,
that word.
yeah,
Yes.
it really can't. And so this is where you stay in touch. You are a real human, whether that's online or in person. You love on them on their social media posts. You love on them whether they buy from you, whether they join your team. You just be a friend, be a human. And again,
Mm-hmm.
that can be done online or wherever, at church, wherever you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Engage. And then the R stands for repeat. And honestly,
Mm-hmm.
that exact same system can be applied to every aspect of your business. You want to get more of your teamies to come with you to your reunion? Guess what? Make a list, invite them, make sure they know about it, follow up with them. Hey, did
Mm-hmm.
you get your ticket to the conference? Engage with them. Hey, I know last time we talked, you said your daughter was sick. Is she feeling better? Something like that, and then repeat the process. So that simple acronym is what all my systems are based on. And again, I have the course to help implement the automation piece.
Yes, I love that. LIFER. Okay. And so as you're doing this, how do you help to adapt these systems to the different people on your team? So are you able to duplicate it and make sure that everybody can use it? And how does that work for you?
That is a fantastic question, and also something that was honestly the driving factor with implementing the systems myself and then creating the
Mm-hmm.
course to help show people how to do it. So what I've found and what I've seen, and I know you have as well because we talked about it briefly, is that for the network marketing leaders or top sellers who are growing their business in a big way online, a lot of them are using pretty expensive, in some cases, platforms, or paying people
Mm-hmm.
sometimes thousands of dollars to set
Mm-hmm.
up these elaborate systems in their business to serve their customers. And they do work. I do see that when you have that follow-up piece especially taken care of for you, it gives you the courage to continue putting yourself out there, or the
Yeah.
confidence that people are going to be well served, and their businesses do tend to grow. But the challenge with that, and this is something I talk about a lot on my podcast, is the money piece and making sure that you're building
Mm-hmm.
a profitable network marketing business. That if you're not making money, you should not be spending hundreds and certainly not thousands of dollars to invest back in your business. And so
Yeah.
I found this system, that the one that I use, it's less than $50 for everything. And some of it's even optional, a month. And so I found, and even the course itself is affordable. And so it's meant to serve the girl that is, or, whoever in network marketing who is,
Mhm.
they've got a handle on, they've been sharing, they've maybe hit that first rank in their business, but they want to grow. It's designed to be simple and affordable, and break
Mhm.
it down exactly how they can do it themselves. It's more of like a DIY system, if you will. And so that kind of serves them. And then the cool part is everything in it is exactly what I would tell even a new person to do with their customers. So even if they're not setting up the automations or they're not using a text marketing platform, they're just using maybe Facebook Messenger or just their own, cell phone to communicate with customers, the messaging and the conversations is exactly the same throughout the process. It's just one's automated. And I think in that way, it kind of serves, as I said to you before we started, it serves the 98 percenters, where some of these fancy and expensive systems are more focused on the 2 percenters. And I'd rather
Right.
a more inclusive option that works for everybody.
I love that. And so, just tell us how we can get in contact with you. I know that the inclusive networker community is going to want to plug into the things that you have and just really learn more about your system. So tell us more. How do we stay in touch with Heather?
Sure. Well, funny facet of my story, and they can check out my podcast for all of it. I actually took an entire year off of social media because I wanted to focus on alternatives to that so that people could learn that it is not the only way. I do think it is something after being off of a year that it would be a mistake to ignore it completely. But having said that, I am now back online, so they can find me. I'm Heather K. Burge, Burge, on Instagram, also on Threads now. We were just chatting about that on
Yes, Threads. Y'all get on Threads. Come on.
But if they want specifically information about the course, it's at heatherkburge.com/automate. So that would basically kind of walk them through the bullet points of it. And then you can learn more about that. So heatherkburge.com/automate, or just heatherkburge.com to kind of read more about my story. And then of course on Instagram and Facebook and all the things now.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Heather. And thank you all. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Inclusive Networker. Thank you again to my fabulous guest, Heather Burge. You will find her information in the show notes, and we will see you on the next episode of The Inclusive Networker. Bye.